little water. Major Burge wrote home to his mother.
Respected Madam, sitting fearlessly about 200 yards from 2 million bloodthirsty Turks, I take up my pen. I forgot to mention I've got about 6 feet of solid earth between me and them. The sun is very hot and I am very thirsty. The only thing there is to drink is water that comes from a nasty well, which tastes as if it had a dead mule in it. However, we are given purifying tablets, which are very good, and make the water taste as if it had 2 dead mules in it.
To my highborn royal wife, Ayşe, from your husband, Mustafa Mehmet, Captain, 13th Turkish Infantry. Oh, Ayşe, my morning star. I pray God to bring this all to an end. I can see our lovely Constantinople in ruins and our houses burnt to the ground. These English are very persistent, and there is no fear of death for them. They're very cruel. They watch us like wolves in the night, and are upon us like the devil in the day. And why did we join in this wicked war? Ayşe, I must now take my leave of you, as the sun is sinking and I must away to my devotion. God bless you, Ayşe. I wish I were at home to give you my adorations.
But Ayşe never received Mustafa's letter. It was found on his dead body by a British soldier. The Turks lost 10,000 men in one afternoon. As spring turned into summer, the stench of the dead became unbearable. Eventually, an armistice was called to bury the dead. Many Turkish soldiers were illiterate. Their experiences were reflected in their songs.
Çanakkale içinde vurdular beni. Çanakkale içinde vurdular beni. Ölmeden mezara koydular beni. Oh, geçtim eyvah.
Disease became a major killer, particularly typhus and dysentery.
My old pal, he was smart and upright as a guardsman. After about 10 days, to see him crawling about, his backside hanging out. We were trying to lower him down into the latrine. I don't know what happened, but he simply rolled into this foot-wide trench. We couldn't pull him out, we didn't have any strength. He drowned in his own excrement.
Allied resolve was weakening, as Lieutenant Colonel Fahrettin realized, writing to his father.
The morale of his troops has sunk so low as to be beyond description. These fellows will eventually have to embark their troops and remove them one of these nights.
On the 20th of December 1915, they did just that. Turkish officer İzzettin Bey was woken by the duty officer at 3 o'clock in the morning.
They had spotted many frigates and military transport ships. They thought it was a new invasion. But on the contrary, the British were running away. Their situation had become hopeless. What had happened was victory and the will of Allah.
Turkish troops enter abandoned Allied trenches. They did not fire on the retreating Allies, happy just to see them go. After 9 terrible months, the hills of Gallipoli fell silent. Both sides had suffered around 250,000 casualties. But for the Turks, it was a triumph.
When the enemy finally withdrew, Constantinople was decorated from one end to the other. At night, the minarets were lit up with oil lamps. Everyone was full of joy. Pale faces began to smile. Constantinople came back to life.
The Germans were still trying to ignite a holy war, jihad, in the Middle East.
In the mosques, fiery speeches are made against the English. The excitement of the population is increasing. 60,000 Afghan riders are ready to march.
The German agents who'd slipped into the Ottoman Empire as a traveling circus were now crossing Persia, disguised as tribesmen. On the 19th of August 1915, they evaded Russian patrols and entered Afghanistan. Their mission: to raise a Muslim army against the British and invade India. The team had been on the road for 9 months and had spent much of the time arguing about what route to take and who was in charge. The answer to that was German spy Oskar von Niedermayr. Then Enver Pasha had second thoughts. The Germans, in stirring up countries to revolt against their Russian and British masters, encouraged ideas of independence. This clashed with Enver's vision of uniting all Muslims in an expanded all-Turkic empire. Enver pulled the Turks out of Niedermayer's mission, leaving the Germans to go it alone. And when they finally reached Kabul, the Emir of Afghanistan kept them waiting another 2 months before he'd even see them.
His Excellency listed the reasons why he could not receive us earlier. It of course had nothing to do with anything political. He compared us with tradesmen, with lots of wares from which he could pick whatever he fancied and considered necessary. Everything seemed to be a business transaction for him.
The Emir played the Germans off against the British. Great riches, even his country's independence, were at stake. He hit Niedermayr with a demand for £10 million and 100,000 rifles and guns. While Niedermayer's party waited for the Emir to decide whether to invade India, they blundered about, offending Muslim sensibilities.
In order to enjoy some forbidden alcohol, the soldiers secretly brewed schnapps. The first drunkard, a sight never before witnessed in Afghanistan, as it is a religious blasphemy, caused severe public anger.
The Emir had long been on the British payroll. Now they upped the bribe to keep Afghanistan on side.
There were rumors of the arrival of huge money transports from India. We worked it out that the closer this caravan got, the icier our relationship with the Emir became.
Niedermayr and the Germans finally realized they were pawns in the Emir's game and abandoned the operation. Jihad wasn't set in the east ablaze, but it still had the power to petrify the British. And Enver had no intention of halting his expansionist plans. He sent Colmar von der Goltz, a distinguished German field marshal, to take over command in Iraq and drive the war through Persia into India. Then 72 years old, von der Goltz kept in touch with his family.
I could never have imagined that in my old age fate would take me so far out into the world, and that I would travel in the steps of Alexander the Great through countries that filled our imaginations when we were young.
Britain decided a show of strength was needed in the Middle East, to persuade the Arabs that the British were the masters there, not the Germans or Turks.
The capture of Baghdad would create an immense impression in the Middle East, especially in Persia, Afghanistan, and on our own frontier, and would counteract the unfortunate impression created by want of success on the Dardanelles.
By May 1915, a British division under Major General Sir Charles Townshend was advancing up the Tigris through Iraq, then part of the Ottoman Empire. Just 25 miles short of Baghdad, they were halted by the Turkish 6th Army. The British fell back on Kut, a town on a loop in the Tigris. The Turks surrounded them, and the British settled in for a siege. Major Dunn, who drew this map, wrote home on Christmas Day.
A very good dinner today. Mutton, Scotch broth, salmon mayonnaise, chicken conflay, roast duck and green peas, Italian eggs, chocolate. And, of course, we toasted all our dear ones at home.
The British found themselves up against Colmar von der Goltz, now in charge of the besieging Turkish army, his conquest of India on hold.
Unfortunately, the English have dug in well, and we don't have the technical means to get rid of them. Whether we will meet again in good health is in God's hand.
Townshend was optimistic they'd all be rescued within days. But by January, with the food running out, their own cavalry came reluctantly to the rescue.
About 3 weeks ago, the first horse fell under the butcher's knife. Since then, they have been slain daily, about 20 a time. We have it in steak and kidney pie, horse mince, horse rissoles, potted horse, horse soup, stuffed horse meat, etc. Ad nauseam.
Hundreds of British soldiers died trying to save Townshend's garrison.
This morning there was a strong English attack. Between the battle lines, the field is covered with English corpses.
The relieving force downstream has again failed to get through. General Townshend has issued a communique to us. The eyes of India and England are on us, and we shall go down as heroes, which doesn't do us much good. I'd sooner not be a hero in Kut and have plenty to eat.
The men are dying off fast now from starvation, scurvy, pneumonia. The Tommies are sticking it out better than the Indian troops, who refuse to eat mule or horse.
On the 24th of April, during the last desperate days of the siege, a gallant attempt was made to send a ship carrying 270 tons of food up the Tigris to Kut. Ali Ihsan was one of a group of Turks who stretched a cable across the Tigris, ensnaring the supply ship.
We confiscated an English boat which contained all kinds of food, enough to feed 5,000 for 2 months. It was called Julenar, but we renamed it Kendigelen, the Godsend.
Townshend became so desperate that the British made an offer to Turkish General Halil Pasha for the freedom of the garrison.
General Townshend offered to me 1 million English pounds for the freedom of the English army. Had this offer been made in other circumstances, my answer would have been one word out of the barrel of my rifle. Trying to keep my calm, I replied that I took this offer as a joke.
Finally, on the 29th of April 1916, after 146 days of siege, Townshend surrendered. An even more humiliating defeat than Gallipoli.
All up now. A terrible pity. Never shall I forget that morning of surrender. We settled down to the melancholy task of destruction. Poor gunners. Some were in tears as the guns they were so proud to have tended were blown to pieces. The Turks marched in at noon and took